Hello, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our webinar, Discover New and Exciting Diverse Books for Your Classroom Library. I'm Tiffany Bickle, and I'm a Literacy Accounts Manager here at Booksource. I work with educators to help ensure that they have the books they need to engage and support their students. Prior to coming to Booksource, I worked as a classroom teacher and an instructional coach.
And hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm on Booksource's collection development team, which means that I work with a bunch of different publishers. I get to review soon-to-be released titles and help decide what books we're going to carry and help to curate our classroom library book collections. And one of the best parts of my job is that I get to talk about books. So I'm really excited to get to share some of these new titles with you today.
As many of you already know, Booksource is all about helping educators get engaged, high-interest books into the hands of readers. During today's webinar, Stephanie and I are going to talk specifically about why access to diverse and inclusive books is so important. We're going to share title recommendations with you for new and exciting diverse books for every grade range, from pre-K all the way to grade 12. And finally, we'll leave you with diverse book lists and a classroom library checklist that you can use to evaluate your own classroom library for gaps in representation. And just so you know, we will be emailing these slides to all participants, so don't feel like you need to write everything down. Now, I know you're excited to learn more about diverse books, so let's get started. We thought that we would begin by sharing our definitions of diversity and inclusivity. When we think of diversity and inclusivity, we think about diversity of cultures and experiences. This includes, but is not limited to, gender, race, ethnicity, abilities and disabilities, socioeconomic status, and global perspective. We also consider incidental diversity. And this basically means that we have a cast of characters that can be diverse without actually highlighting the diversity or making it a central focus of the story. Diversity and inclusivity is and always has been important to us at Booksource. We know that diversity is kind of a buzzword these days. But as a family-owned, family-first company since 1974, we've always been committed to embracing the things that make us each different and unique. Diversity is even one of our core values.
That's right. So we've talked about now a little bit about what diversity means to us and how important it is for us here. So it's time to get more specifically into how this relates to your classroom and why a wide variety of representation is important within your own classroom library. So many of you may be familiar with the concept of books serving as windows and mirrors. We give credit to the great Dr. Houdin Sims Bishop for this, and we couldn't agree more. All students deserve to see themselves reflected in the books that you have to offer them in your classroom. And it's also very important for them to have access to window books that give them exposure to people and cultures other than their own. Because books really do have the power to expand their worldview and can help them develop empathy and compassion for others. To bring this concept of windows and mirrors books to the modern day reader, we turn to this quote we love from Elizabeth Acevedo. And in case you don't know who she is, she's a young adult author who wrote The Poet X, which won the National Book Award. And we just found out not long ago, just today, that it also won the Carnegie Medal. So congratulations to Elizabeth. And she also has a new book out that just came out earlier this year, called With the Fire on High. So if you have not picked up those, I highly recommend you do. But here she's talking about her experience traveling around the country, visiting different schools, and meeting with students and talking about the books she's written and shared with them, and finding that the children that she meets that maybe look like the characters she writes about, sound like the characters she writes about, are so excited to see themselves finally represented in really quality literature. But then she's also found she can go to the middle of the country, as she says, Iowa or Kansas, where maybe all of the characters or all of the students she meets don't look like the characters she's writing about, but they're also so excited to have exposure to her stories and to get to read her books and can relate to them and are as equally excited about them. So it's just a reminder of the power that stories have on our students and how important it is to have books like these very accessible and available to them. So to help equip you in making sure your own classroom library is inclusive, we wanted to take a minute to give you a little bit of insight about how we make sure we're doing this at Booksource. For that, we turned to our in-house team of librarians, our collection development experts. And this is not just me. I work alongside a small but mighty team of librarians and book experts, and we work with around 150 publishers to review a huge selection of titles and decide which of them we're going to carry at Booksource. We review them all and assign them multiple subject tags to make them more easily searchable. We hand select the titles that we put into every one of our collections. We regularly read as many of them as we possibly can, and we talk about them all the time. We also monitor professional reviews, so we make sure we know which books are getting a lot of buzz, and we always keep a pulse on trends within the industry. So we do all of this to make sure that we have access to the newest, freshest, and most diverse titles, and we make sure that they represent today's students and the world around them. So how do we make sure that the collections we curate include a wide variety of representation and a demographically robust selection? Well, we have proprietary title data that we can use to audit all the collections we curate. And we make sure that in addition to being high quality, high interest titles that are appropriate for the classroom, that we also have a wide variety of books that represent culturally diverse characters and authors, LGBTQ+ characters, characters who are neurodivergent or may have other special needs or abilities, characters who have experienced financial hardship, refugee and immigrant experiences, non-traditional family structures. These are all things we look for, and they're all things you can look for too within your own classroom library. Making sure as you go through this that you are also keeping in mind to not have any titles that reinforce stereotypes. And it's important to not only look at your fiction titles, but your nonfiction as well, to make sure that those also feature diverse and inclusive images. To make it easier for you to evaluate your library, we've created an inclusive classroom library checklist. So this resource will be available for you at the end of our presentation. It is free for you to download and print, and we hope that it helps you really take a close look at your own classroom library and identify where you may have some gaps in any of these areas.
And now let's talk about the books. We want to again remind you that we will email you the slides for this webinar presentation. First up, we have new and exciting titles for grades pre-K to grade 2. We're going to begin with the Lark series. This series is written by Natasha Dean, and it's actually labeled Level N. This is an illustrated chapter book series for the upper end of this interest level who are really starting to move beyond picture books and who are ready for chapter books. It features kid detectives, twins, Lark and Connor, who happen to be of Korean and Kenyan heritage, as they work to solve mysteries within their community. The latest book in this series follows Lark and Connor as they figure out who sabotaged the contestants' entry to the local baking contest. A diverse cast of characters introduces readers to different cultures along the way, and they also are introduced to new vocabulary words, a breakdown of some of the words that Lark and Connor learn or are puzzled by. Throughout the story also happen to appear in the back of the book. I also wanted to let you know that Lark struggles with dyslexia, and we know that that's something that students do struggle with, so that's something that they may be able to identify with throughout this story. And I also want you to know that while that is something that Lark does struggle with, it's not a central part of the story. We also have next the Yasmin series, and you'll see 2 of the books featured here on screen. We have Yasmin the Builder and Yasmin in Charge, and this series is written by Sadia Faruqi. It's also labeled Level K. This is an Own Voices series about young Pakistani American Yasmin, and it's brightly illustrated. It's an early chapter book series for new and emerging readers. There are actually 8 books, and as I told you, we are featuring the last 2 here up on screen. They're around 32 pages, but most importantly, they include critical thinking questions, a glossary of Urdu words, which is the language Yasmin's family speaks, fun facts about Pakistan, as well as an activity related to the story in the back of every book. Each book takes Yasmin on a new adventure where she learns a very important lesson, either in the classroom or in her community.
That's right. I love Yasmin.
We
We also have some beautiful picture books that we're excited to share with you. The first one we're going to tell you about is called A Plan for Pops, and I have a copy of it right here. This picture book features a young child named Lou, and we actually never find out in the story if Lou is a boy or girl. It's not really important. The gender is not specified. But Lou loves spending his Saturdays with his 2 grandpas. They eat breakfast and then they'll take a trip to the library where Granddad loves to read books about how to make things. Pops, he's an old rock star, so he loves to watch music videos at the library. And after they return back to Grandpa's house, Pops usually takes a nap, and Granddad and Lou work on building machines. They like to build like Rube Goldberg type machines. So one Saturday on their way to the library, Pops has a fall, and Pops ends up restricted to a wheelchair, and he gets very sad and starts spending time in his room. He doesn't want to get out of bed. So Lou and Granddad, they realize that they need to do something to get Pops up and moving again. So they use their machine building skills and they come up with a plan. And their plan gets Grandpa feeling better, gets him out of bed, and I just want you to know it does have a beautifully happy ending with Pop saying, "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear," when he sees what they've done for him. I love the way that this story does feature a rather non-traditional family without that being all the focus. Next, I'm going to hold up this one too because it is so beautiful. It's called Mommy's Kimar. And if you can see, we also have some spreads on the PowerPoint. If you can see the colors in this story, they're so vibrant. Mommy's Kimar is by Jamila Tompkins Bigelow. And in case you don't know, we do find out in the story that Kimar is the same as a hijab. And this story is told from the perspective of a young girl who loves going into her mother's closet, finding her colorful Kimar collection, and using them to play dress up and pretend. So the pictures that you see here all throughout the book are just this bright and vibrant. And they show the young protagonist becoming a queen, a bird, a superhero, all with the help of her mommy's Kimars. So this picture book does a nice job of capturing a small piece of Muslim culture and also being very relatable to any child who's ever played dress up.
The last picture book that we have for you today is called Drawn Together. This, oh my goodness, I absolutely love this story. It's written by Vietnamese American author Minh Le, and it's illustrated by Thai American Dan Santin. It's an Own Voices picture book, and it's told mostly through illustrations. It tells the story of a young English-speaking boy who's visiting his Thai-speaking grandfather and just realizing how tough the language barrier is. The illustrations show the two having just very different meals, wanting to watch different television shows, and sitting in awkward silence. Until that is, the boy breaks out his art supplies. Suddenly, the language barrier is broken as they realize that they can communicate through art. I love how black and white and color are used to show not only the boy's and his grandfather's distinct artistic styles, but most importantly, how they beautifully draw and tell the story together. Anyone who's ever experienced communication barriers or even generational gaps can relate to and connect with this story. And this particular story also provides great opportunities for cross-curricular application in the classroom, especially in the areas of writing and art.
We're going to move next into books appropriate for grades 3 to 5, and we're going to start with the Jasmine Taguchi series. And this series is going to appeal to the younger end of this grade band, just so you know. It is a lightly illustrated chapter book, but I think it would be great for those 3rd or 4th graders who might not be ready to jump into a full novel and might still be attracted to those slower page counts and the light illustrations. But the content makes it very appropriate to hand to a 1st or 2nd grader as well, who might be ready for that challenge. There's 4 books in the Jasmine Taguchi series. Mochi Queen, Super Sleuth, Drummer Girl, and the one we have featured on the screen is Flamingo Keeper. And they each feature Jasmine and they highlight her Japanese American culture. Each book also features an activity or craft at the end that relates to the story. So for example, in Jasmine Taguchi Flamingo Keeper, Jasmine's grandma sends her a Dairuma doll, and readers will get to learn all about what a Dairuma doll is during the story. And then at the end, there's instructions for how you can make your own. Next is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga. And again, although it is very appropriate for 3rd to 5th graders, you can hand this one to a 6th or 7th grader, I think, too, and they would still be entertained and enjoy this story. It's written as a novel in verse, and it tells the story of a middle schooler named Jude, who is forced to leave her father and her brother and her best friends behind in Syria when violence starts to break out in her hometown. So she travels with her mother to America, where they stay with and ultimately end up permanently staying with her uncle in Cincinnati. So it does a really beautiful job of portraying Jude's voice and perspective as she not only deals with the challenge that is middle school, but she has to do it with in a brand new country, trying to perfect her English, and all while being homesick and really increasingly worried about the family and friends she had to leave behind in Syria. So this novel, I feel like, does a wonderful job of evoking empathy and compassion for the refugee experience. And it just came out at the end of May, so it's brand new, and it does already have 2-star reviews, one from Publishers Weekly and one from Kirkus.
Our next book is Mercy Suarez Changes Gears. And this is an award-winning middle grade novel with 5-star reviews. This particular book is told from the perspective of 6th grader Mercy Suarez as she deals with the typical struggles of a middle schooler, fitting in at school, navigating friendships, and coming to terms with changes in her family. Meg Medina, the author, does a wonderful job at making this a very charming and an extremely relatable story. Readers get to experience the culture of Mercy's close-knit Cuban-American family with her own parents and her brother and her aunts and uncles and cousins and even her grandparents living in 3 side-by-side houses while joining Mercy as she navigates the 6th grade and deals with the typical problems that all upper elementary and middle grade students can relate to. The last book or series that we have for you in this grade band are the Carver Chronicles. This particular series you may have heard of before. Like Jasmine Taguchi, the Carver Chronicles is also actually a shorter, lightly illustrated chapter book series that's perfect for students in grades 3 and 4, but also could be appropriate for 1st and 2nd graders who are ready for chapter books. The series is leveled N&O, and it includes 6 books. The series itself is not a new series. However, we're featuring 2 of the newest titles, The New Kid and Pizza Party. The New Kid is available in paperback, and Pizza Party is available now in hardcover and is slated to be released in paperback in the fall. Through this series, readers are exposed to a diverse cast of characters in stories about students attending Carver Elementary. These are simply stories with family and elementary school focus that feature kids who just happen to be from various backgrounds as they learn lessons about things like acceptance and empathy. All right, middle school teachers, it's your turn. We now present diverse and exciting books for grades 6 through 8. And to kick us off, The Last Day of Summer by Lamar Giles. What I love about this book is that it's a lightly illustrated chapter book fit for middle school. I mean, how often do you get to see something like that? It also happens to be a mystery, sci-fi, fantasy. It's all of those things. About 2 cousins who are working to save their town from some mysterious characters who have invaded the town and frozen time. It's a humorous, imaginative tale that will captivate a middle grade audience, and it's a great example of incidental diversity as it features African American boys as the protagonists, without their race being a central focus of the story. This next book is one of our absolute favorites, Zenobia July. This novel is so powerful, and it captures the perspective of a new student starting at a new school and just all of the challenges of making new friends and finding a place to fit in, as Zenobia is forced to move across the country to live with her two aunts after her parents tragically pass away. Moving gives Zenobia the chance to finally express herself and live her life as the girl she's always identified as. But she harbors her trans identity as a secret from the other students in the school. When someone posts harmful comments on the school's website, Zenobia's skills as a computer hacker allow her the chance to try to uncover the culprit. There are an array of cultures and LGBTQ+ characters portrayed in this story, and the author is able to tackle issues that are very real for modern students with both humor and empathy.
All right, the next book we have for this grade band is called A Good Kind of Trouble. And this story features a 12-year-old Shayla as she wants to join her parents and her older sister in the Black Lives Matter movement. As a case involving police brutality against an unarmed Black man is making waves in their community. But she is a strict rule follower. She doesn't want to cause any trouble because when she thinks about causing trouble, it makes her hands itch. And so she really doesn't want to make any waves. And the principal at her school has determined that the black armbands that people are wearing as part of this movement are in violation of the dress code policy. But as Shayla starts to become more and more aware of what's going on in her community and the impact that standing up for something you believe in can have, she begins to realize that maybe she can do something, even if it does mean scratching her palms and violating the dress code. So this book tackles these very relevant, real social issues of today, but it really does do it in a way that is appropriate for a middle grade audience, so it doesn't get too heavy with it. And the story focuses equally on Shayla's just relatable middle school life, like the changing dynamics between her and her two best friends, her first crush, and finding a place to fit in. Next, we have a graphic novel, beautifully colored graphic novel by Nidhi Shinani called Pashmina. This book features American teenager Priyanka as she desperately wants to know more about her Indian heritage and the father that she never knew. But this is never a topic that her mother wants to discuss. When Priyanka discovers a beautiful pashmina in an old trunk in a closet, it magically transports her to a bright fantasy India, where a talking elephant and a peacock greet her and show her all around the land that her mother came from. They can't, however, teach her about her own personal background, which is what she really wants to know more about. So with a little persuasion and some help with her mother's sister who still lives in India, she convinces her mother to let her go visit her aunt, to go to India, where she tries to uncover the secrets of her mother's past and the history of her family. So you can see by looking at just the spreads on the slide that the coloration in this story really adds a lot to it. It shows the reality in black and white, and it switches to these bright, vibrant colors that you're seeing anytime the pashmina is adorned and the fantasy India is portrayed.
And now it's time for our high school age students. We'll start off with hashtag Not Your Princess, Voices of Native American Women. This is an anthology of poetry, short stories, and artwork by Native American women. It is edited by Lisa Charlieboy and Mary Beth Leatherdale, and it gives voice and power to Indigenous culture. The voices portrayed in this book capture pain, joy, challenges, and bravery while working to shatter stereotypes. The variety of the stories and imagery within really highlight the diversity among Indigenous women and provide important perspectives for all readers to appreciate and understand. Completely switching gears. Our next book is called Children of Blood and Bone, and it's by Tomi Adeyemi. This is the first book in the Legacy of Orisha fantasy trilogy, and it's set in a world heavily influenced by West African mythology, where magic, once possessed by magi throughout Orisha, has been destroyed, and anyone bearing any kind of magical ability has been ordered to death by a ruthless and powerful king. Told from alternating perspectives of Zelie, whose mother was killed for being a magi, and who finds she may actually harbor some buried magical abilities of her own, Amari, the daughter of a king who is struggling to break free from the royal lifestyle she's been forced to live, and Anan, the son of the king, who is desperate to prove himself worthy of someday taking the throne, readers are taken on an edge-of-your-seat adventure, with Zelie struggling to restore magic to Orisha while attempting to keep her own family safe and outrun and outsmart the monarchy that's hot on her heels trying to stop her. This book is so good. Book 2 is out in December, and we cannot wait.
I am so looking forward to that sequel. All right, we have 2 more 9 to 12 books for you, and the next one is We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia. And this young adult novel is set in the fictional Medeo, an island mountain where the poor live near the wall that's built around it, and the upper class live literally at the top, and those on the outside of the wall are ignored at best or killed when if they try to cross over into the city. Those lucky enough to be selected to attend the Medeo School for Girls are groomed to become one of 2 wives that each upper class man will marry. One, a primera, trained to be a stoic and practical wife to help her husband with business and maintain order in the household, and the other, a segunda, trained to be much more emotional and nurturing and wife and mother. So this book does really explore some traditional gender roles, but it also challenges them. When young Primera Daniela graduates school and is married off to one of Medeo's top politicians, she finds herself entangled with a grassroots resistance group called La Vaz. And they are attempting to overthrow the government that she's now married into, so she finds herself with a lot of hard decisions to make, all while also slowly and reluctantly realizing she may have feelings for her husband's other wife, if that isn't complicated. Set in a world heavily influenced by Latinx culture, this exciting and timely story is the first book in a duology, so there's another one, a follow-up for this one coming as well, but not until 2020, so stay tuned for that. And lastly, but not least, we have Internment by Samira Ahmed. This is a speculative fiction story, and it's set in the very near future version of America, and it follows Muslim American teenager Layla as her family is forced by armed guards from their home in the middle of the night and brought to Mobius, a Muslim internment camp that the government has set up in the desert. Along with countless other Muslims, they're forced to live in a tiny, dusty trailer where cameras are everywhere, even in their living spaces. Drones follow them. There are armed guards everywhere. They're always watched. And anyone who attempts to speak out or resist is beaten and, as Layla says, disappeared. They're never seen again. So with desperation, the story follows Layla as she realizes that she's got very little choice but to try to find a way to fight back and resist, despite the ever-increasing risks, dangers, and fears she must confront in her attempt to force change. So this one has some pretty clear ties that you could make to current events, and also very clearly could be tied to a lesson or a discussion around World War II. The White Rose resistance that took place in Germany during the war is referenced throughout this story, so there are some clear ties there. And then also an obvious parallel to the Japanese internment in America around that time as well. That brings us through the primary books that we wanted to share with you today. However, we always have more. Because our goal is to share our newest and freshest books we have available with you. That also means that most of what we talked about today right now is only available in hardcover. And we know we're talking to teachers, and we know we can't ask you to stock your classroom libraries with hardcover books only. So we also wanted to quickly share with you all of these books that have recently been made available in paperback. You've probably heard of a lot of these, and hopefully are happy to hear they're now available in more affordable paperback options. So The Crossover by Kwame Alexander is finally in paperback. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds is too. Check that one out. The Front Desk by Kelly Yang is a great middle grade read about Chinese immigrant family. So we're really excited about, we love all of these books and wanted to make sure you know they are available now in paperback. And finally, some other books we are also excited about, but that just aren't quite out yet. But we wanted to at least give them a mention. So look for all of these in the coming months as well. There is a new leveled emergent reader chapter book series called Sadiq that's coming in August. A beautifully illustrated picture book called Solway. There is a short story anthology by Jason Reynolds coming in October. So all of these books here, I could talk about more and more, but for time's sake, please just take note and make sure you look for these over the coming months.
Now, we wanted to provide you with some additional resources as you learn more about and use diverse and inclusive books in your classroom. These additional resources include a link to more information on mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors by Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. Also, there's a really great TED Talk about the danger of a single story, as well as some Booksource resources. You'll find our own voices in diverse authors collections, as well as more information on our upcoming webinar series about how you can build a diverse and inclusive classroom library. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're at the end. We want to invite you to check out booksource.com/diverse-books-printables to access the titles and printable resources mentioned in today's webinar. You will also receive an email that will include this information as well, so look for that. On booksource.com/diverse-books-printables, you will find our diverse book list for grades pre-K through 12, featuring all of the books that we shared with you today. You will also be able to access right away today the checklist that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So our inclusive classroom library checklist is currently out there available for you to start using. It's free, download it, print it, and hopefully it will really help you identify some potential gaps in your own classroom libraries. Now, during today's webinar, we barely scratched the surface. There are so many great books and so many diverse and inclusive titles. We just didn't have the time. We'd love to continue sharing with you. Please feel free to reach out to us at literacy@booksource.com to connect with literacy accounts managers like me. We're always willing to answer questions and share additional titles that best meet your students' needs.
Thank you so much for joining us today.